I'm Kevin Appleby, Head of Partnerships and COO at GrowCFO. And today with me, I've got Reto Haupt from AMAG and Manuel Marcos and Eric Riley from Acterys. We're going to be talking about how AMAG, Reto's company, cut its budget cycle in half. Now, I think back many, many years to times when I was in PwC Consulting, and we were constantly talking to clients about this challenge. And actually, it's a very, very difficult thing to do. We succeeded with some, we failed with others. And quite often we found that the technology was the limiting thing. And technology has certainly moved on in this area. And those of you that joined us a few weeks ago on the Tech Showcase, when we were looking at planning budgeting software, you'll have seen some of the developments that are around in this area. And today we're going to see another one. But this is really interesting because Acterys is taking a different approach to anybody that we had in the Tech Showcase. They're using the Microsoft product stacks, are very much using Excel, are using Fabric, which is a tool that really I don't know a lot about. And I'm hoping we find out a lot about today, and using Power BI. So before I hand over and we get the discussion going, I just quickly want to launch a poll to say, where are people in the planning maturity at the moment? And are you in that place that you've still got loads of manual spreadsheet processes, back in the place that I was finding most clients 20 years ago? Are you still in progress? You're struggling because of clean data and systems that aren't fully connected? Or you've actually got to the place you've started, or you're already there? Eric, Manuel, is that sort of what you're expecting? I know I'm a little bit surprised because when we've run the poll in the past, we've had many more people in the not yet category. And seeing the still in progress and seeing 20% of people in the we've started box actually is quite good news to me. I don't know, how does that reflect in your experience?
Yeah, I would say not even 2 years ago, I would have, that 41% of not yet would have been closer to 75%.
Yeah.
So we're on the right track. This is encouraging.
Yeah. But Reto, you've got all the way to that top box. You're already there. You've got real-time AI insights that are part of your daily operations. So, Reto, can you describe what the situation was in AMAG before you got started on this?
Yes. Thank you very much. Maybe some words to my employer first, in order that you can see how somehow in which sector we are acting. AMAG is one of Switzerland's leading mobility provider in automotive, retail and services. The company represents major car brands like Volkswagen, Audi, Seat, Skoda and Cupra, and is actively shaping the future of mobility through digital transformation, sustainability, initiatives and new business models. So it's quite a big player in Switzerland, approximately 8,000 employees. And what is important to say before I start and also say some words about Acterys, I'm not being paid by GrowCFO and Acterys for this presentation. I'm completely neutral, just as would expect from a Swiss person. I will say my words and not somehow paid by GrowCFO or Acterys. I think almost everyone working in finance knows this situation very well. We have thousands of Excel files stored somewhere on servers or laptops. I mean, Excel is really a great tool. It's flexible and powerful, but then that flexibility also comes with some risks. It can lead to shadow accounting and a lack of transparency. So the challenge we faced, we had a technology isolation. So our reporting and planning system worked as a standalone solution. I didn't have direct access to the encrypted database. We could only use it through a vendor-specific interface. This made us very dependent and limited our ability to adjust or expand the system. So because of that, of license restrictions, we had to use Excel as a workaround. for entering budget, mainly also because we wanted to have the cost center owner who enter the planning data and not the controller sitting somewhere in the head office and entering all the data. And as a result, the process turned out to be quite challenging. We created one Excel template for each cost center group, meaning 6 templates before entering the planning cycle, or every planning cycle. And then we copied all those files to cover all business units and profit centers, what resulted in over 500 Excel copies. And you can imagine how difficult it is to handle 500 Excel files stored somewhere on servers or even on laptops from cost center owners. This was really a mess. And during the planning cycle, the region controller with a valid license manually uploaded and downloaded each file as soon as we wanted to have a consolidated view on the whole profit center. And I can imagine that is also a problem many companies have. They have not a real-time view on the planning in every stage of the planning cycle. That was certainly far away from an ideal situation. And in our today's fast-moving business world, we needed a system that help us make quick decisions and act easily. And our old system simply wasn't built for that.
What Reto has described there is a situation I've seen many times in my former life doing planning and budgeting projects back in PwC consulting maybe 20 years ago. The situation that Reto's just described is typical of what I've found in many clients. And yeah, we had some tech at the time. That tech really never evolved that much over the last 20 years. But AI has come along. Products like Acterys have come along. What is it, Eric, that's been holding people back from that kind of transformation? And what's new?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so we'll talk a bit about that. And I know that, Reto, you're going to talk a bit about the process you went through to select and solve this. But let's quickly let's talk about a couple of the terms that you just referred to there: entering data, copying data, needing to use Excel and common tools, even though you had a planning solution in place. These are common things that we run into all the time, and it's actually the reason Acterys and Fabric exist in the first place. Just real quick on the background of Acterys, we are a Microsoft certified partner. In essence, we bring very enterprise grade write back capabilities to Power BI, to Excel, and we're doing it from a single staging layer SQL database. We've been doing this pretty much since the dawn of Power BI. And we do that. We're going to talk a bit about how we do that. This is just, of course, the background on the organization. We're an Australian headquartered organization. Like I mentioned, Microsoft certified, actually licensed by Microsoft as the engine behind their planning module, Business Performance Planning and Dynamics. We're also licensed by Dayforce as a labor planning module. And you're going to understand why throughout the course of this discussion, why this technology delivers these types of benefits, why these organizations are aligning. But most importantly today, it's really about what Reto has done at AMAG in terms of fixing some of those disparate situations that he was in with the data. Real quick, just so that everybody understands the architecture behind this, because this is certainly not something that's designed to be a pitch. This is educational in terms of how most organizations are tackling their data issues. This slide right here has nothing to do with Acterys. This is a general high-level representation of how organizations are trying to start to solve that disparate reporting environment. Whether you're seeing here on the left-hand side of the screen, every organization has a bunch of different systems, ERP systems, CRM systems, HR systems, and every single one of them contain data that is important to run the organization, to forecast, to budget, to operate, fill in the blank. And so what organizations are doing is they know that this data in disparate sources has information that's relevant to that exercise. So they do one of two things. They pump the data into a reporting business intelligence solution directly, Or the more mature organizations are starting to pump their disparate data into a data warehouse. This is where we can talk a little bit about Fabric a little bit later, Kevin. But in other words, we're centralizing all the information across the organization into one warehouse, and then we're creating reporting environments that, again, end users are using that business intelligence tool. In the Microsoft realm, this is Power BI. These users are Power BI users, in some cases, maybe even still Excel. But the point is they're leveraging a common environment that is collecting all of the disparate data across the organization. The main thing to take from this slide is that everything is moving to the right. The data is a one-way street. We're grabbing it from source systems. We're putting it into a data warehouse environment. We're making it available for visualizations, for dashboards, for reports at the end user level. What this is missing is the ability to interact with the data. So when you add the Acterys technology to this, the only thing that's really changing is that my end users now have the capability to input data, to collaborate on the information, to leave comments for each other, to push workflow statuses along. In other words, the one missing ingredient that almost all applications have in the first place is the ability to interact with this database, not just report on it. This is what allows the connective tissue to now occur across the organization based on the staging layer environment where all the data is residing. We're trying to get to an AI-ready state in the first place. AI is irrelevant if you cannot have your data clean and organized. So in order to create this environment in the first place, this has to occur. Organized data, relational models. What are the use cases for the reports? Permissioning. What can my users see? What can they change and contribute to? There's a permissioning apparatus. But this is all done, again, they are in Power BI. They are using Excel as the front-end tools. They're leveraging a SQL database, SQL on Fabric, Azure SQL. SQL is the main construct from our perspective. And because of that open architecture and the familiar tools, now the world's your oyster. You're not doing the point solution planning application that Redo had been in and then still exporting to Excel. You're now able to use those tools and connect them with that write back capability that closes that loop and allows this to now become a collaborative environment versus just a read-only dashboard reporting mechanism.
Yeah. So Eric, just to clarify that's all spreadsheets that Reto was sending out to his people to fill in, bring back, and then consolidate. That's replaced by this write back engine.
Yes, that is correct. And then again, because most of the founders of our organization, they were also in the FP&A space consulting for 5 years prior to the creation of this technology. And they were hearing the same thing from Redo over and over from different CFOs. We have a planning solution. We invested a lot of time and money into implementing it, into having a front-end experience to plan with. My users are still exporting into Excel.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, Manuel, we've heard about Excel, Fabric, Power BI. How do these things help finance leaders and finance teams operate at AI speed?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to answer the question building on what Eric just explained. He gave a great overview of how this all works technically. You know, how Acterys connects Excel, Power BI, Fabric, Azure into one unified system. But from my side, I would say it really comes down to what this means for finance teams in practice, how it is changing their day-to-day reality. Let's be honest. I mean, most of the finance teams and probably most of the audience today here already live in Excel and Power BI. Those are probably their comfort zones. Yeah. The challenge has always been that these tools weren't truly connected. So people, spent hours consolidating data, emailing files back and forth, waiting for reports to refresh. And by the time everything was ready, guess what? The numbers were already outdated, right? And by the way, there is a funny thing. You mentioned this before. Do you know what is the current most popular functionality in Power BI?
No, come on.
Exactly. Probably most of the audience is right. Export to Excel. Export to Excel is the most common functionality, and what Eric described changes that completely, because now when someone updates a budget or forecast in Excel, it instantly flows through Fabric and updates Power BI dashboards automatically. So no manual steps, no version counts, no export Excel anymore, just one live system and always up to date. And that's where for me, the magic happens, because suddenly finance can work at what we have called today the AI speed. Yeah, they can test assumptions in real time, see the impact immediately, and guide decisions as things happen, not really weeks later. Yeah, and there is a direct consequence on this, which is trust and control, because everything runs securely in Microsoft Fabric, so governance and data integrity are built in from the start. So finance keeps the ownership and everyone can collaborate effectively. And that brings me to the third piece and last one, which is the collaboration. Because instead of finance and operations working in silos, which is probably what they have been doing during these last times, they are now looking at the same numbers, the same story. Yeah. So conversations shift from typical questions, which version are we using, to what should we do next? So really what Eric explained from a technical point of view is more or less the foundation, the how. But what I'm really describing now is more the why. And why it matters. It matters because it turns finance into a live and predictive control center. One that's not just reporting on the past, what they have been doing, but actively shaping the future of the business.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I've heard from some people that Fabric is a bit of a game changer from Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What is it that Fabric's adding to this?
So Fabric, think of Fabric as like a very organized kitchen. In the sense of you have a lot of different data across the organization, and you don't know necessarily what it is, where it might be, how to extract it, much less how to combine it with other data to make a recipe, right? So in other words, you got your data in the organization. Fabric is the connector. It is where, as you can see it, and I'm still going to use the slide we're looking at right here, all that disparate data on the left, right? In all those different systems. I mean, typically it's a massive exercise. If you're using that top arrow, for example, you're building independent integrations to get the data you need extracted out of each of those systems. What Fabric does is it's doing that automatically and doing the work for you. So when your systems on the left are connected to Fabric, you now already have an automated environment where all of your data from all of your different systems is feeding in a real-time environment into one data repository. And then from that repository, so think of your ingredient cabinet. Now your ingredient cabinet needs to be organized. Where do these ingredients belong? Do they belong with each other in some cases? Are they relational to each other? Are they completely separate for different recipes? That's what Fabric also contains. It's sort of that blueprint as to what the data means, where does it belong, and how can it be combined with the other source system data? And it gives you that very fertile ground from which you can, have that single source of truth across all data within your organization. Yeah. Now, the important part, Kevin, is when that takes care of your data on the left, right? And so to Manuel's point, it's important for me to have that real-time source of truth that I can get reports from. But what happens is what's happening with that data? Right? It's traveling over to people. It's getting into reports. We already talked about how the export to Excel button is the most common button in Power BI. And then what happens? We're losing the intelligence and the plans and the additional insight that would come from anybody in the organization once they export the data.
Yeah.
So if you get that bi-directional communication with those users back into Fabric, now not only are you getting a real-time fertile environment of all your company's data, you're also getting real-time contributions from anybody that's leveraging that data in the business.
Gotcha.
So you're creating that fusion of both, and Fabric's the heartbeat. It's collecting it from the left. It's collecting it from
Q&A. Amma has asked a question: is Acterys connected and integrated with Odoo ERP? It sounds to me like that question should be: is Fabric connected and integrated with that?
That's exactly the better way to look at it, because before Fabric, because obviously Acterys has existed before Fabric, it was more a question of how does the organization get data out of any system first and foremost. And there's a variety of mechanisms for which, prior to Fabric, we would get information in from disparate systems. It might be as simple as a batch run, right? Exporting of reports, ideally API development. But now it's on the source systems in a capacity to say, yes, we can pump our data into Fabric. Because then once it's in Fabric, now you have that fertile ground. And to be fair, same situation exists in that case in some source systems. Some legacy systems might not be able to have a dynamic feed into Fabric. So it might be a scheduled job, right? Once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, but it's still getting into Fabric for that reporting mechanism that's needed across the organization.
Brilliant, Eric. Eric, I'm going to stop you there because I'm conscious about time. Reto, now, many leaders want to leverage AI, but aren't sure where to start. You've become AI ready through this. How did you do? Where did you start?
You mean where we started, our starting point?
Yeah.
I mean, what you mentioned before, the fast-moving environment and the fast-moving world, and for us it was really clear that we have to move. And I would say I love visions, and we tried also to have a bigger vision, where we want to go. So I think this bigger vision is quite important, and also for finance. I mean, for most people, this already sounds like science fiction, that you have maybe a machine doing the whole planning cycle, and the human is just like doing some changes, or these anomaly detections, and always proposing some actions you have to take. So this vision was quite important for us. And then we started really small, like we automated easy things. I think the tool are already ready in many ways. I mean, it's also important that not only IT is doing this automatization, also the department is doing, or finance is doing this automatization. People from finance are doing this automatization. So we really started to detect, or we tried to find ways, or find tasks where we can do the automatization in order to build this culture of doing it and changing processes and going in direction of this bigger vision. So we started with automatization, and then quite fast we saw that we need also this environment Eric and Manuel mentioned as well. So we then searched for a tool. And I have to say that apart from Acterys, also many other providers providing also this write back functionality. But for us, it was important to have like this Power BI write back functionality. That was one of the most important thing, because we wanted to stay on Power BI. We wanted to be in this Microsoft world, in order to have not many standalone solutions or data sources somewhere on the servers. So that was a prerequisition we had, and then we came to the short list of 3. Then it was important that we have a user-friendly interface, because we have a decentralized planning, and many users are using it, not only the controller, and that's why it was important to have it easy to use. And then we shortlisted to two providers. And the last thing is AMAG is very strict in that one, is the IT security. I think it's coming more and more common that the IT is giving some rules and has really strict security guidelines. And that one was then really the reason why we selected Acterys, because we have this full integration in this Microsoft world with Fabrics and Power BI and everything. So that was like the selection process why we came then to Acterys.
Hey, brilliant. So you implemented this, Reto, and we're talking about fast, precise, and agile. What does that actually look like in your finance function?
I mean, everybody knows what this means. The definition of that one. I mean, it was for us. It was important that we have like possibility to do the budget fast. And I think Manuel and Eric also mentioned that you also mentioned how important that is, that we can react very fast with the planning process, because also with AMAG, sometimes the budget was outdated already 2-3 days after the planning phase was closed, and then we relied only on forecasting during the year. I mean, that makes no sense, and all this effort you have to do is then useless. So we found, or we tried to find a way how we can use more with parameters and variables, and that is very easy possible with Acterys, meaning that we focus really on the key drivers for every planning. So meaning we have this driver-based financial planning, what Acterys always propose and sees different advantages. Also, we were convinced from this approach that you really like just do or just change some parameters or main parameters in order to create the whole budget. Meaning in the background, then you have like these variables and all these variable costs and fixed costs are then allocated to the cost centers. But you really plan with some parameters which are important. And this can going very fast, because also we realized then during the planning process that the cost center owners were really surprised how fast the budget is created, because they just, for example, they just entered the number of vehicles for the next year and maybe the price and then the margin, and then all the rest was like allocated automatically by the system. So we do this driver-based financial planning, we do the workforce planning, we do the investment planning. So the whole planning is done by Acterys in this write back functionality. And we do like the forecast, budget, midterm planning. So the whole process is now over this Power BI write back functionality provided by Acterys in this Microsoft environment. And we start more and more also doing business cases with that, because it's going so fast.
Brilliant. So there's a question popped up from Amit, which I'm going to just ask. I don't want to answer straight away, Eric, Manuel, or Reto, but Amit is asking, what are the watchouts when looking to combine different data repositories into one Fabric Actress platform? For example, what's the typical level of investment needed to get data definitions aligned, data cleanse completed? But what I was going to go on to ask you about, and perhaps we can weave the answer to that question in here, that we've got organizations who are hesitating to adopt AI due to complexity, due to fear of disruption, due to that whole data alignment issue. How can finance do this and work fast and without breaking what works?
Great question. And yeah, I'll take the first stab at answering this, and I certainly invite the others to chime in here too. And I think let's kind of migrate to the next slide here real quickly. And this isn't to be braggadocious. This is mostly for everybody to understand the different variations of the technology and how it can be used, because it's directly relevant to your question, Kevin. All organizations will hesitate. A transformation usually means disruption, and that's what gets people hesitant to walk down any new path. Is a transformation isn't a guarantee. A disruption might be, regardless of whether you achieve it or not. So what this really means is we look at AI in three main pillars at Acterys. And the first one everybody on this call is probably already aware with is agentic AI. It's Copilot, it's ChatGPT. It's the AI that helps us become more efficient in our jobs. That's one side of the AI, and that's important. And that's the overlay that we want to achieve with our business data, with our financial data, is to be able to talk with it, to converse with it. That's the the prize in the sky that we're rapidly moving towards. The second is predictive, right? Predictive analytics. So I want to take a set of data and I want AI to rigorously go through it, find patterns, recognize highlights and relations that a human might take days and days and days to understand. Take that set of data, apply algorithms to it, forecast it into the future for me, show me different versions of what that means. That's the predictive side of AI, the analytical side. And then the third, which is the least sexy, but the most important, is data cleanliness, right? Because what good is AI if it's being used on garbage data that's not relational? So AI is leveraged there to detect anomalies, to cleanse information, to understand if it's been timely or not. Is it in a relational state compared to my other information that's come in? This allows it to be a bedrock of good data that then the predictive side can leverage, which then agentic at some point can leverage because we're now able to talk to it. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what department you might be running. Everybody has the similar challenge of collaboration, planning, and leveraging data to make a better decision. And that's why this slide just kind of represents the diversity of our client base, because they're all challenged with that same primal concept, albeit in a widely different use case with widely different data. But because they're using common tools and usually an infrastructure that's already in place, Microsoft backend, some Microsoft front-end tools, that's what allows transformation to not guarantee disruption, because we're keeping our clients in a familiar, comfortable environment while they're transforming. Manuel, Reto, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yes,
Oh,
I fully understand this question, because also AMAG faced a lot of or struggled quite a lot with that problem. So where we spend quite a lot of time are the dimensions. So we really took our time to set up the data model in a way that we can connect different sources. So we have a clean dimension set up, where we then connect like different sources with the different variables in it. So that was for us important. When you have this setup, then you can easily or it's like easier collect than other sources, because you can always like connect or link it to the dimension you have already. So that was for us important.
So Reto, what was this process like for you to connect all those data sources together? Was that an easy job? Was it a difficult job? Did it take a long time? Was there a lot of investment?
Yes, but we tried also to keep the team small doing that. So it was mainly me and one technical specialist in SQL, because I brought the business knowledge in it, and the technical guy was then also watched and really that it's on a technical side proper setup. Our experience in the whole project and also in this process we had to this transformation was that one of our success story was success, let's say key driver why we succeeded was that we had quite a small team. So we were just a team of 2. And we implemented the project in approximately 5 months, a part of our job. So we had a job, and then we spent like 50% of our workload capacity in this project. And we started then in March, and we knew that we have the deadline in September in order to really do then the budget with the new Acterys setup. And that was quite risky, because we did not have a plan B. So that was really then our strict deadline. And this core team, this tool was a very good setup. The risk is that we decided nearly everything by ourselves. maybe it's also trust from the company that you trust on two people just doing the whole project, but you don't have then these workshops and these discussions. And I mean, you have like 10 people in it and 10 different opinions. And then when you set up the dimensions or the methodology of planning cycle, then you do like 10 different workshops, and that is really time consuming.
Yeah.
So that lean and agile execution was really a super decision. The trial and error mindset, we just did it. And the disadvantage is, or let's say the risk is that we have maybe then somebody is going the completely wrong direction.
Yeah. So, Eric, you slipped past a couple of slides early on there that were talking about the improvements that people have seen.
Yep.
What can we flip back to those and just quickly talk about the tangible results? Yeah, those ones. So, urban energy, 3 days a week saved. Are you able to comment any more about those?
Sure, absolutely. Because these are actually a couple of great examples because they're very diverse use cases. In this particular case here, the most important facts I think for the audience on this webinar is what they had and what they converted into. So they were literally managing solar projects, solar implementations of solar panels on commercial and residential buildings. And they were struggling very much with understanding when those projects would hit a wall, when they would need additional funding, if there were going to be delays, and incorporating that into their financial model and their cash flow forecasts. So what they did is they put in Acterys, and what the first thing that they did is they brought in the data from their disparate systems. So their accounting system fed the environment, their payroll system fed the environment, and then their project information fed the environment. So now with those three data sources that were previously disparate combined into a staging SQL database in a model, they were then able to not only then report on that information from that model, but then interact with it and then say, well, what if my project on the east side is delayed by a month? How is that going to affect my cash flow projections? And instead of it being, a lengthy multi-day process, right? This is where the 3 days a week were saved in terms of being able to have that real-time visibility across all the data relevant to those projects in a relational model. So that's one use case. Yeah. This one here was more of a field operations use case because this gentleman decided the biggest thing holding us back is our executive team has very delayed visibility to what's happening in the field. This is a Superior propane company. What I mean by the field is they had technicians measuring propane information at residential sites. How much has been used? How much has leaked? How old is the equipment? And the executive team was getting no insight any sooner than 2 weeks as to what was occurring across all these technicians in the field. They designed a Power BI report that sits on the tablet of all those technicians, and they input their findings into a Power BI report that feeds the SQL staging layer that is then in real time powering executive dashboards as to what's occurring in the field. So it wasn't even initially a finance use case. It was, we have data in this organization that's meaningful to finance that is taking us more than 2 weeks to get access to. And they changed that rapidly through the data collection process using familiar tools, able to roll them out and actually compose the front-end experience for those field technicians using the Power BI interface. So a couple of wildly different examples there, Kevin, but the reason they're in this is for that point. Very different use cases that could be accommodated once you create that connective tissue with these tools.
Yeah. So we've heard up to 80% faster reporting consolidation cycles, Reto. What was your practical experience?
I mean, it's not only the time what you gain, it's also the quality, in my opinion. So what we saw is that the people entered the planning data quite fast. So we were much faster than before. I assume it's at least 50%. And after that, you have more time for discussions. And during these discussions, you can also like change with these what if simulations, what I think Eric mentioned as well, that you can like change the planning very fast. And it was then the quality, what we realized that we have quite less errors in it, in the planning process or in planning what we do in the budget, etc. So this one was of the most important savings for us. But on the other side, what we really was for us, or for me, quite a good experience was the feedback from the users, these 250 users, already during the budget process. They were so surprised that they have always the full view on everything, and they don't have to wait like until everything is collected, as we discussed before with these Excels. So they have the full view, and they enter the data, and they say it in real time. They see what is the impact on the result on the profit. So this one was for me very, very good to hear that they like that. Also the management, that they have already during the budgeting process, they have like the view on the whole company. Where is the budget at the moment, and they see the progress of the planning cycle during the whole planning cycle every day. So that is from the management point of view also an important advantage.
Brilliant. So 50%. You're saying, but what's really interesting me there is not just the speed increase, but the quality increase.
I mean, it's difficult to say because you spend, and when you save time, then you spend more time for the quality.
Yeah. So this is looking pretty fantastic. We're seeing Fabric coming in here, being a major change factor in all of this. Looking ahead, what's the future of this finance at AI speed? Where do you see this going, folks?
This AMAG, for us, it was important to prepare the environment to be ready for artificial intelligence. And in my opinion, artificial intelligence is a perfect fit with finance. I mean, it's quite a lot of data, logic, and for the artificial intelligence, it's easy to let's say prepare, for example, a forecast or a budget, at least doing a proposal of it. So that is for artificial intelligence already at the moment easy to do. So for us, it was important to have the preparation, the environment. We are like on a structure which is also prepared for the future. And for us, it was Microsoft with quite hundreds of developers doing everything to be prepared also for the future. So that one was for us also important. And now we go more and more really into artificial intelligence. And as Eric mentioned before, I think the last step, putting the artificial intelligence on the top is not the most difficult part of it. The most difficult part is the whole setup and the whole preparation for artificial intelligence.
Yeah. And I'm certainly seeing something that's exciting me. And having been involved in planning and budgeting implementation 20 years ago, yes, we had technology back then, and the things we were using, PwC at the time, we were using Hyperion planning, Cognos planning, which evolved over the years, and we've seen many more solutions coming along, the third generation FP&A tools. To me, something like this, where you're bringing data in from multiple sources, and you've got Fabric there as that control piece, data security, data control, making sure there's one source of the truth, and then having the AI tools on top of that, and this right back that we've been talking about. To me, what's different 2 decades on? It's real this time. The technology is actually there to do what we wanted to do 20 years ago.
I think so, Kevin. I mean, I think part of the reason we've been talking about AI for 20 years, and it's mostly been marketing speak versus the reality, is I think from the business's perspective, when they're not looking at it technically, they have grand ideas of what they would do with AI or what AI could deliver to them. And the challenge has been what we've been talking about today. It's like, what are you deploying AI against? And that's the maturity curve that has been needing to, tighten as we've moved on in order for AI to become a realistic, objective to attain. And so the nice thing about what Reto and AMAG has done forget about the Acterys side of things. They recognized early and often, like, we have a data issue first, right? That's I mean, Acterys can certainly help with that, but we're the connective tissue that makes it a bi-directional application environment versus just a reporting engine. But even that reporting engine, you need to have a foundational layer of trusted, clean data in a relational state. If you don't have that, you can't get good reports, and AI certainly can't give you good results. And I think that this whole data architecture discussion has been deemed as a separate discussion to AI, but they are intertwined. And that is why we've been hearing a lot of rhetoric about AI while we've been catching up on the back end of data collection, organization, and modeling.
Yeah, I think as well though, there's something we can't forget in this, that if you don't change the mindset of your people and the processes you use around this better data, you're still not going to get anywhere. It's not all down to tech. And I'm seeing AI agents coming in the finance transactional processes. You procure to pay, you order to cash, and yeah, it does make a straight difference there. But when we're looking at planning and budgeting, reporting, faster close, there's still a lot of this is down to people change and getting the right attitudes and the right processes. And what I'm seeing here, the thing that we've been talking about for the last 20 years is moving from a budgeting cycle to continuous planning.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, to me, that is still mostly about changing mindsets on how you do things.
And I think it's important that also the finance people have some technical skills and also have some capabilities also in the AI maybe. And maybe also for sure, finance people are not so common as an change agent. I think the cultural part and the mindset of the people is very important in this area.
Mm. So Reto, if you're starting this again, is there anything you'd do different?
Different in which area you mean?
Well, just what the learning from the project. What are your key lessons learned? Are there any mistakes you made here? Anything that in hindsight you'd advise somebody else going through this process?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned already the problem could be that you have a too big project and too many people talking in many workshops about how we should change, and you have then different opinions. So in my opinion, it's important to keep it a little bit smaller, like a task force, which is really like taking care of it with people who have the right mindset and want to change really, or want the change happen. That is for me one important thing. And the other one is that I think the people see then the result, and then you get in a momentum. As soon as you have started the train, then it's much easier to go forward. And this start was for us the critical part.
Yeah.
Okay. But what I also meant to have to mention, Eric mentioned it also with Acterys. I mean, Acterys is just like not just, it's many more behind, but it's mainly a visual integrated in Power BI. When you see that, you have the feeling that it's very easy. I mean, it's just like drag and drop a visual in Power BI, and then you can do the write back. That is not so easy. I'm quite skilled with Power BI, but also for me it was like a learning curve. And you need at the moment to start a little bit of time to learn how Acterys or this write back functionality really works, and how what happens in the background, and that is a little bit of time you need to learn that one.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got 10 minutes left, folks, and there's quite a few questions come in already. Let's see if we can work through them. There was an early slide that talked about cloud, hybrid, on-premise in sort of the state of things. Kurt is asking, would it be correct to understand that this sort of solution could be hosted on-premise without the need for a cloud?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not to spend too much time on the answer, but there are in essence 7 unique deployment models of Acterys, but mostly it's about where that database is hosted. Yeah. So we obviously, Acterys has its own cloud and infrastructure where we can host the database for our clients. A lot of the larger clients will want it hosted within their infrastructure, their Fabric or Azure environment. Government contractors need on-prem more than not, so they can actually do a full on-prem of both application and the database. Long story short, I know where this person's question is coming from. A lot of flexibility as to where that database is hosted in terms of what the client's preference and current infrastructure needs are.
And actually, that was a question that came up a couple of times when we did the demo day with other planning and budgeting vendors a couple of months ago. And most of them there was a definite need on certain government contracts to make sure the data was hosted in the country of that government, couldn't take it elsewhere. So it sounds as though this one is actually the one that's got the solution for that question. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. That was also one of our problem. At the moment, we have our own SQL database.
Yeah.
And for us, it was important that no data go outside. So that was one of the IT security rule. And there is Acterys, one of the provider who is fulfilling that. And some others, for us, we didn't accept this setup. So that was an important one for us. But we have our own SQL database at the moment.
Okay. And a couple of questions that are very similar. Costas is asking, is there in place a procedure of approvals? Ria's asking, how can you control the input by the business so they stay within the guidelines for cost and heads? So have you got this write back going on? How do you control that so that people are writing back sensible stuff?
Yep. It's a great question. I mean, there's a fun phrase we commonly recite over on our end of the fence, which is not all write back is created equal.
I can imagine. I really can imagine.
And one of the reasons that we were selected and licensed directly by Microsoft is because of this question. It's not just a simple localized write back report mechanism. This is why the importance of the SQL staging layer behind the application is so important, because that is where you're going to control your permissioning. Not only is there row level security and everything that you're familiar with in Power BI in the first place, but we're opening up a second layer of permissioning, and that is not only what can the user see and report on, but what can they change? What can they input? And there's a very sophisticated apparatus wrapped around that is separate from just your technical SQL Server Studio Manager tools. Part of the Acterys application is an administrative portal accessible to the business user that allows you to write these rules, write these permissions, create workflows. I mean, even on the screen you're looking at right now, it's just a simple table edit visual that's allowing a user to come in and say, I'm no longer in progress on this report. My inputs are done. And I am now going to change my status to submit it, right? That's interacting with the database, not just this report. So whether I'm adding comments to this report or pushing workflow statuses along, it's all being centrally managed from that staging layer database where, again, your source data is coming in and protected and locked down. And then version write-back tables are capturing the inputs from the end users. So again, you have that fusion of business data and insights and contributions from the end users.
Brilliant, brilliant. Going back to the data question, it's an anonymous attendee, but that person is asking what level of outside data support resources exist and are required to enable this functionality. Do you need data engineers, data scientists, or what new skill sets would the finance team need to leverage? Is there SQL scripting, Python, things like that?
No.
Good question.
Yeah, go ahead, Reto. Yeah.
Sorry, Eric. So what was one of our, and you can maybe add then if you have time, one of our advantages from Acterys was this data modeler. And data modeler is something it's a web-based, let's say, interface, and I say it with a not so specialized word between the SQL database or database and and the interface, user interface. And even for a finance guy, it would be possible to change something, and this data model enables even collect different data in a quite an easy way. So you don't need deep SQL skills in order to connect different data. That was one of our, let's say, advantages we saw also with Acterys. Sorry, Eric.
No, that's okay. And I just, while you were saying that, Reto, I threw up a quick example. This is again, not all write back is created equal. You need to have an administrative portal. I mean, you need to be able to give the business user the controls to permission and build and maybe create a new dimension or a new field for some data and not have to rely on those technical expertise. Now, make no mistake, whether it's our or one of our partners that are being leveraged for the initial project and implementation, or a client has its own army of certified Microsoft SQL, Power BI technicians and data scientists and developers, it is very helpful. And you do need some of that skill set when you're building this from the ground up. But once it's in place, the tools are there to make it completely manageable by the business versus needing to always rely on expensive consultants, especially the ones that would usually be associated with a point solution. The good news here is if you have SQL and Power BI knowledge and expertise, you're 75, 80% of the way there. And you're just learning the connective tissue piece that now I can actually use my Power BI reports as an input mechanism from my end users in a controlled, audited, permissioned environment. But I now am opening up that collaborative experience versus just read-only reporting.
Jane is saying, can you talk on pricing? I guess that's a very big question for this stage of webinar.
Yeah, we're happy to talk about pricing. It's very difficult to talk about it in a broad sense on a webinar like this, as you can imagine, Kevin. But it's obviously it's platform and user based on the Acterys side of things. And that, of course, is assuming that the organization is already leveraging Power BI, because you do need to have access to Power BI licenses in order to leverage this technology. But happy to have those discussions with anybody that would want to follow up with us.
Yeah. Very last question. Namposa is asking, can this be tailored to best suit any business, e.g. financial services? My guess is this is pretty much sector agnostic. Is that
not only sector agnostic, department agnostic. Like I was mentioning earlier at Superior Propane, we initially were introduced to them because they were looking for an FP&A platform. It just so happened that when they saw the demonstration of the technology, it was an enterprise applications director in that demo that said, I have the first use case. And it was for field operations.
That's the interesting thing. Yeah, I can see so many use cases for doing this. Basically, if you've got a big data warehouse or a big data repository with many sources and you want to report on it with Power BI, then this is potentially a solution for you. Reto, Manuel, Eric, thank you hugely. I hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've got something to increase your knowledge of what's going on in this planning and budgeting space. I mean, there is so much happening, so many different tech approaches. And we've had this today. This isn't necessarily a sales pitch from Acterys, but it's showing you folk just one of the approaches that's possible here. Sitting here at GrowCFO, we remain solution independent. I'm not saying that Acterys is the one you should implement or not implement, but we're showing you something else today.